All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating look at our own everyday habits. Specifically, we're targeting a trap that almost every single student or young adult has fallen into at least once. Picture this, a college student. Let's call her Jamie. It's late, she just got a terrible grade on a midterm, she's totally exhausted, and she's just endlessly scrolling on her phone in her dorm room. Suddenly, buying a brand new, ridiculously expensive pair of headphones seems like the absolute only thing that'll make her night better. You know the feeling, right? We're looking at something so universally human you've probably experienced it a dozen times without ever realizing it actually had a formal name. It's called the melancholy market, the psychology of emotional spending. We are going to unpack the exact scientifically backed relationship between our moods and our money. And honestly, I promise it's going to completely change how you look at your next online shopping spree. So, have you ever made a purchase just to improve your mood when you're feeling down? I mean, answer that honestly to yourself right now. For Jamie, it's midnight during finals week, stress is literally through the roof, her mood has tanked, and suddenly, buying a $50 aesthetic desk lamp feels like the absolute only way to find a shred of happiness. We have all been there. Maybe for you, it was a fancy specialty coffee you didn't really need, a new sweater, or just some random online order you finalized after a particularly brutal day of classes or work. We've all felt that low and sought out that quick, momentary fix through the simple act of buying a distraction. But why does that happen? Why do we convince ourselves that a desk lamp is going to somehow cure our academic anxiety? Well, it comes down to why you spend more when you're sad. And this simple concept is really the anchor for today's entire psychological deep dive. See, it's not just a passing thought or a random coincidence. It's a direct, undeniable correlation. Sadness, as a very specific emotion, has a distinct and powerful impact on our spending habits, actively compelling us to part with our cash. Let's dig into the psychology here. When Jamie is super sad about her bad grade, she's feeling a profound loss of control over her environment, right? Her brain is just desperately craving a win. Making a purchase is an active decision. It provides this immediate, albeit temporary, illusion of control and a quick hit of dopamine. You hand over some money, you get a shiny new object, and for a split second, you're the master of your destiny again. It is an incredibly seductive trap, especially for young adults who are constantly juggling new responsibilities, tight budgets, and really high-pressure situations. Let's move into Section 1, the melancholy market, defining the phenomenon. So, the melancholy market is officially defined as the psychological environment where the emotion of sadness directly drives and increases consumer spending. Really think about that phrasing for a second. It's not just that sadness happens to occur at the exact same time we're spending money. No, it means the emotional distress itself is the engine driving the transaction. Researchers have actually identified and labeled this specific connection between our emotional lows and our open wallets. And in today's highly digital age, this environment is perfectly optimized to catch you right when you fall. Think about Jamie scrolling at midnight. Algorithms are remarkably good at detecting when we're stressed or vulnerable based purely on our browsing habits. Then, boom, they serve up targeted social media ads that feel like the absolute perfect solutions to our temporary despair. The melancholy market preys on young adults in these exact moments, seamlessly turning a fleeting feeling of sadness into a finalized transaction before you even realize what's happened. And that brings us to Section 2, behavior meets real research. Here, we're comparing relatable behavior, the everyday act of feeling sad and buying things, versus real research, which is the formal study of the psychology of emotional spending. What's so brilliant about our source material is how perfectly it highlights where these two intersect. We aren't just talking about abstract numbers in some stuffy academic paper here. We are talking about Jamie's late-night cart checkout. We're talking about you and me. Researchers in a lab setting are observing the exact same mechanisms that are playing out in apartments and dorm rooms every single night. The science maps perfectly onto a student's impulse to just buy a distraction. It shows us that when we feel a sense of helplessness, our willingness to pay for new items significantly increases compared to when we're in a neutral mood. Real psychological research makes total sense of those everyday impulses, proving that Jamie isn't just bad with money. She's experiencing a documented, highly predictable human reflex. This synthesis of relatable behavior and real research creates what experts call a strong retention hook. Like, why can't we look away from this topic? Well, first, it validates personal experiences. When science comes along and confirms that, yes, being sad actually does make you spend more, you instantly feel seen. You realize you aren't alone in those habits. Second, it links everyday actions to scientific study, elevating a totally mundane online checkout into a fascinating case study of human psychology. But look, understanding this hook is only half the battle. How do we actually break it? How does our student Jamie stop falling into the melancholy market? Well, by understanding the science, we can implement 3 highly effective practical tips to manage those impulsive purchases. Number 1, the 24-hour cart rule. If you see something online that you suddenly desperately need, put it in the cart and just close the tab. If you still want it 24 hours later, when your mood is stabilized, then you can evaluate it logically. Usually, the urge completely vanishes. Number 2, create friction. Unlink your credit cards from those dangerous one-click checkout systems on your phone or browser. When Jamie actually has to physically get up, find her wallet, and type in a 16-digit credit card number at 2 a.m., that extra friction is very often enough to snap her right out of the emotional spending trance. And number 3, mood tracking. Start paying close attention to your emotional triggers. If you know that studying for a really tough exam makes you want to buy clothes, you can recognize that trigger beforehand and proactively choose a free coping mechanism instead, like going for a walk or just calling a friend. So the next time you feel sad and reach for your wallet, will you recognize the psychology behind your purchase? By spotting this psychological pattern and using those 3 simple tips, Jamie was actually able to overcome her emotional spending. She learned to spot the melancholy market before it completely emptied her bank account. The goal of this explainer wasn't just to share a quirky psychological fact. It was to give you a real framework to understand your own actions and take back control of your spending. Will you realize when you've just stepped into the melancholy market? You are now fully empowered with the knowledge of exactly why you might be reaching for that credit card. Keep observing your own habits and keep asking the fascinating questions behind them. Thanks for learning with me today.